Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our third annual CX Connect event. I'm Bob Fernikes. I'm the publisher of CRM Media, and I'll be the host for you this week. Thanks for joining us. Our session today is titled Optimizing Customer Experience While Dealing with Reduced Staff and Budget Cuts, sponsored by TeamSupport. For many of you, or for some of you that are unfamiliar with TeamSupport, let me just explain who they are. TeamSupport is a comprehensive software solution that manages the entire post-sale customer experience, resulting in revenue growth, reduced churn, and higher customer satisfaction. The platform includes a ticketing system, live chat software, advanced customer analytics, and customer success software. So now to introduce our speakers for today, we have Pete Khanna, CEO of TeamSupport, Joanne Zehr, Director of Operations, Back Office at Constellation One, and Geoff Abels, Managing Partner, C5 Insight, and Chairman of our Smart Customer Service Conference. Geoff is going to be moderating the Q&A at the end of the session, so make sure you give him a lot of questions. So, some very good questions so we can join in and keep things going. I do have a little bit of housekeeping right now. I mentioned the question and answer segment at the end of the presentation. You'll notice, though, that you have two spots to enter something. Please use the chat to communicate with either us or other people on the call today. Or if you have a question, you just use the Q&A. It makes it easier for us to find them. Okay, so at the end of this session, we'll also be choosing an attendee as the winner of a $50 Amazon gift card, but you have to be present to win. So ask a question, stick around. So now I'm going to turn things over again to Pete Khanna, CEO, TeamSupport. Welcome to the broadcast, Pete.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us today.
Great.
I'll go ahead and share my screen here to start the presentation. So everyone, thanks for joining us today. We thought we'd hit on a timely topic of how to deal with maybe rough economic times or dealing with reduced staff and budget cuts when handling customer support or customer success organizations. And we have Joanne here today, who's a customer of TeamSupport's, to give you some real world feedback and real world best practices today. So let's quickly review an agenda that we'll go through today. There's our fine pictures that we had up that you can see. And so the agenda today is we thought we'd just talk about what's impacting the businesses today. So a bit of the economic state, and then have Joanne talk about real world examples for her best practices that she's put in across her corporation to help deal with these times and in fact do more with less, which is the theme we're hearing a lot from our customer base of how can you do more with less and how to utilize your software and your human resources to make sure you're providing a great customer experiences for your customer base. And then we'll get to Q&A, as Bob mentioned at the end. So just to talk about a little bit of the economic state, right? I think most of you are experiencing this. If you're not, consider yourself lucky. But as you can see from some of the stats here, this really started, in Q3 of last year, where you saw budget reductions, maybe even staffing reductions, and people preparing for a potential recession. And most companies, as you can see from this information, about 91% of CEOs are talking about they were preparing for a recession environment or preparing their business to operate in that type of environment. And it's come to fruition this year because 80% of business leaders are talking about they're experiencing hiring freezes, staff reductions. Obviously, that's not just in customer support staffs or support organizations. It's across the company. But it doesn't look like it's stopping. You still saw some of the larger Fortune 500 companies having layoffs in Q2 even of this year. In fact, 168,000 tech jobs, or over 168 tech jobs, people have lost their job so far through May. That's close to 35,000 a month happening. So how are we all dealing with this to make sure we still have a thriving customer base? Because our customers are not going away, right? In fact, they're probably demanding more from us. 74% of annual revenues come from your existing customers, whether that's through renewal increases whether that's through new product sales or adding more users or agents or seats to your software. So there's no release, right? As they say, there's no rest for the wicked. And so for us who have to support those customers and manage that revenue, how are we dealing with that? And how are we making sure we're using those best practices to either outperform our competition, to make sure that we're becoming one of the tops in our industry, and making sure our customers are satisfied? Because what we're seeing is that support demands will not decrease during this time. In fact, most of our customers that we have to support are dealing with the same things we are. So they lean on trusted advisors more, right? So whether those are vendors, software providers, however you interact with your customers, they're leaning on us. I'll say that because all of us are support leaders on this call more, right? Increase 11% annually, year over year, people see their support demands go up. And if we don't find a way to improve our interaction with them through automation or things that aren't always just human related, we're going to see burnout in our reduced staffs. And typically the burnout happens on your best people. And that's something to be concerned with, because they're the ones that feel like they have to take on more and more with no relief. And if we continue to have reduced productivity or a loss of interaction with our customers, you'll find that the majority of the reasons why we lose customers today, consider that churn or downgrades, not people not taking as much services from us, it's because they've had a poor customer experience. And that's something we want to avoid. And that's hopefully you'll take away from this session today when Joanne talks about the top best practices that she's implemented to help our organization overcome these things. So we want to make sure this doesn't become the norm. We do not want to have reduced staff, create lower productivity, and then create poor customers' experiences, because all of these things build on themselves. If you can create great experiences, wonderful customer satisfaction, become a trusted advisor during these downtimes, we found that customers that do that even come out of these downtimes stronger. And so that's the key, is how are we operating today in this current environment? And so we want to make sure we can change our mindset and we don't become the norm. How can we do more with less, which is a theme we're seeing across our over 1,600 customers today at TeamSupport? And how do we utilize best practices to streamline our processes, our automation, or utilize software to help provide better experiences for all of the customers that we support today? And make sure our key metrics, right? Revenue growth, renewal rates, churn, net retention, all of those things that we're accountable for are maintaining a high level within our organizations this year. So with that said, and setting the stage for kind of what you're going to hear today, I'm going to hand it over to Joanne. Joanne's been a customer of ours for some time now, and she's going to talk about the best practices she's implemented across her organization. So Joanne, thanks for joining us today, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Pete. So just going on to the next slide here, before we go into the 5 best practices, what I want to do is really state kind of that classic state of that customer support. So prior to our implementation of TeamSupport, we didn't have the visibility into the actual volumes of our support teams, as most of our teams were utilizing Outlook and Teams as our support tools for ticketing, tracking, and collaboration. The lack of visibility would prevent us from making educated decisions on what we needed to scale and support our teams. We had to create many processes to fill in procedural gaps, such as allocations, as well as delays in response. So using Outlook as our primary tool caused many inefficiencies. So we do have a quick poll here, and I'm just going to list out a few of the inefficiencies that we've experienced. I'm wondering if you're currently experiencing those as well. So Steve, can we put up the quick poll? So the inability to validate ticket volume, unable to confirm utilization, limitations on processes and best practices, creating these silos of teams based on product grouping. And we had no visibility on escalations once we assigned them over to another team. So just curious to see if anybody else has any of those pain points, because that is something that we had struggled here prior to our implementation with TeamSupport. We're just going to give it a quick moment. I'd like to see how many rock stars we have here, how many are looking for some points on what we can do to enhance that and improve our current processes. Steve, I can't see the results. Is it when you close it that I'm going to see what we're currently at right now?
I think so. Yeah, I'll
Okay.
in poll and we'll see what happens.
Perfect. Sorry, we're just going to give it another minute or so. All right, well, that did not give me, oh, here we go. All right, excellent. So it looks like 54% of the users on the call are using email for their ticketing tracking. And also we have 46 that don't have their support where they want to be. And nobody is saying that they're customer support superstars. So excellent. That is a great way to get started. So the 5 best practices, and we're just going to go over to the next slide here, Pete. Excellent. So the 5 best practices I want to focus on today are offering self-service, using standardized responses, taking chat automation to that next level, realizing the power of analytics, and then taking a look at the power of collaboration. So to get things started, let's start with enabling your customers for self-service. So at Constellation One, we're seeing less calls into support and an increased email ticket creation. Currently, 95% of our tickets entered are being created without speaking to a person. So imagine if we could take 50 to 60% of those customers who knew they had the tools available for self-service. We have recently empowered our customers with many tools through TeamSupport, known as our customer support portal. So what you're seeing on your screen now is just that standard look of the portal. So right now, customers can now create tickets by logging into the hub, which provides them with the ability to select their own severity, add screen recordings and images. But the advantage of the customer entering their ticket through the portal allows for ticket deflection. So as customers are entering their tickets, it's looking at those keywords, and TeamSupport is searching through our knowledge base to promote the self-resolution, taking that customer experience to the next level. They can also review our knowledge base proactively by reviewing articles which have how-to, tips and tricks, video tutorials, and our product release notes as well. Lastly, we've also received positive feedback that customers no longer need to search their email for historical tickets. They can access these directly from the portal. So we've noticed that about 25% of our customers have started taking advantage of our self-service portal offerings and has increased month over month. So Pete, next slide here.
Yep, let me jump in and to
Right.
echo some of these best practices that Joanne has put in place. We surveyed our customers last year, and our customers have about 95 million support interactions a year. Consider those tickets in a general form. And what we found is that 71% of all of their cases are closed at first contact. And so if they can get a faster response out through self-service, that provides greater support for their clients and a higher satisfaction. And 66% of all those cases were really simple how-tos, right? Think about how to reset a password or installation, or just a how-to that you can deflect to a YouTube video or a knowledge base that you have. And what's more important to know is 70% of those customers we surveyed through all those 95 million transactions, 70% of them expect self-service. It's something they need and they want out of a software tool, out of a vendor, out of someone that they work with. And in fact, the best practice is being able to deflect 40% of your tickets to a knowledge base, to self-service, to something that they can self-serve themselves on. And so what that allows you to do is say, I'm going to take the tickets that require more collaboration or human interaction and put the best people on them or give them more time than dealing with the 66% that can be handled by ticket deflection, self-service. So it's really a productivity saver. It's a customer satisfaction win because that's what they expect and that's what they want. And then it allows you to spend more time with the complexities of whatever service offering you're providing to your base.
Fantastic. So while we continue to work on encouraging our customers to self-serve, we've also armed our team with quick solutions, which we refer to as standardized responses. So relationships are keys. Customer wants answers and they want them quickly. So as a leader of our implementation and support team, the customer experience is always top of mind, and we strive to provide top-notch unified customer experience. So for our support teams, we're able to create quick responses for commonly asked questions. So those how-to, how do I reset my password? Where can I find this information? Having these answers at the fingertips of our support reps allows them to close tickets with less effort, which is typically around 1 public action and under about a 5-minute timeline, but maintaining that highest level of customer support for our customers. So just remember to review your standardized process periodically, keep them fresh, and keep them as general as possible so that you have that casual tone to your responses. And then for us, what we do is we meet monthly to review the new tickets which did not have any of those standardized responses to determine if we need to increase our library for both internal responses and external consumption for those knowledge base articles. But we've noticed that our teams have embraced these responses and have actively been converting to new topics prior to our monthly reviews. But you can also utilize these technologies to create templates for other purposes, such as internal escalations. What we've done is we've created canned templates for our teams to escalate matters internally. These templates include information to gather from your customers to ensure you have as much information at hand to reduce that back and forth to the customers, which typically causes escalations, frustrations, and delays in responses. With this best practice, we were able to close on average 98% of our tickets month over month within the last 6 months or so. And then taking a look at the implementation, we also use TeamSupport to track our onboarding and implementations. We've saved a significant amount of time creating onboarding checklists and canned responses throughout the implementation. So once again, what we do is we can those welcome emails, we can even a checklist that we would assign to our onboarding specialists to go through their training to really create that unified onboarding experiencing while providing visibility across all departments on the status of the implementations. So that sales rep that may be wanting to check in on the account, what they can do is they can go in, take a look at the implementation ticket and really see exactly how far along the process they are and what percentage complete that onboarding is done. All right, next one. Pete, I think this one's for you, but I can talk about some of this. It's really ensuring that your reps do not have to search for the answers. As I mentioned, it reduces the time to resolution. We had that under 5 minutes a ticket, sometimes even less. It creates that unified customer experience for both our support as well as our implementation team. And 60% of our customers experience the automated interaction, rate their experience an 8 out of 10. For us, I can say that our onboarding, they've been rated a 9.5 out of 10, putting this standardized unified approach in place. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. I mean, one
No
thing
problem.
we found in surveying our customers as well is that the standardized responses allow them to enhance their responses over time because they can see where the standardized responses aren't hitting the mark if somebody is coming back to them. And that gives them a chance to make sure they're tweaking and modifying those responses to hit the masses of these questions. Because as all of you know, right, as we manage support teams, is that we rarely have, the majority of the tickets coming in are similar activities. And if we can nail down these standard responses and tune them over time, there's going to be higher customer satisfaction that comes out of it. So the same thing we talk about that Joanne will hit on here in a minute about your analytics as a best practice. You want to analyze these responses and make sure they don't become stale and that you're learning from these ticket responses in your customers. And so a lot of times people will also say, this takes the personalization out of it. And Joanne, I don't know if you've noticed that with your customer base, but from our surveys, it's not. It's what customers expect and want, right? Speed
That's exactly it.
Something they want. So I don't know if you've seen a backlash at all on that, or it took some time, but we see that people appreciate this when it's implemented.
That's exactly it. And we also ask our support reps to keep that personal touch, put that introduction in place, say hello, and use that customer's name. So it doesn't really feel like a canned response, but it is a quick response. So when that ticket's coming in, it's as quickly going out.
Excellent.
Fantastic. So the next best practice is utilizing chat automation. So although this is not something we've implemented at Constellation, when we're actively investigating the implementation to take the benefits, which will be reviewed by Pete over the next couple slides.
Yes, thanks. And so, chat is critical to any support need now. It's not just the front end on your website to look at people, that have inquiries that are prospect based for a sales and marketing. This is how people want to interact today. It's digital conversations, right? Which encompasses all of the chat, messaging, live interaction. They're growing at 68% year over year. Most people nowadays don't want to talk to a human. They want their question answered fast. They want to make sure that they have access to somebody and it's on their time and they can initiate it and have a real-time conversation. So we talk a lot about how can you set things up, consider them chat bots, maybe it's AI, which TeamSupport is rolling out here in the next 2 weeks as well to help automate responses. And the key here is to make sure that you always have access to a human if needed. But people want to be able to interact and they want you to guide them to the right answer, right? And these can save you about 30% on your costs, whether that's personnel or energy, dealing with the right customers that you have as well. And 64% of agents report better focus on topics that matter, because chatbots, you can set them up to be almost prompted, right? And guide somebody to an answer in a knowledge base or pull from a best practices that you have. And so you can set up workflows that are built for specific type of customers coming in as well, whether those are admins, whether those are general users, or whether it's somebody that's new to the system. And so you can make them really intelligent. And you can then track to see how many of those are answering the question or how many people bail on those to go to a live agent to see their effectiveness. And if you keep trying to tune those into effectiveness, like I said, 40% of your tickets should be deflected, either through a knowledge base, through a customer hub that Joanne mentioned, or through some kind of chat or automation that you're having that they can interact with as well. The key here also is to tie these things into a ticketing system for analytics, for best practices. And you can also trend to see what are the hot topics coming in. If you had a new release, if you're a software company, right, you can see, great, here's the problems people are having with it. And you can take action quicker, because instead of waiting for tickets to come in, people are more likely to go directly to a chat because they feel like they have immediate access to an agent that way. And if you're having considerable problems or you have a canned answer, as soon as you hit chat, a bot can come up and say, I know you're experiencing this, our engineers are on it, or whatever explanation you want to give can be canned and hit the masses very quickly and not have to worry about email or a reactive approach to things. And so, you know, top 2 use cases here, or some use cases here, you can look at, hey, what are the top ticket deflections I'm having in my hub? Let me can those answers, which Joanne talked about, and you can put those on the first response when somebody prompts into a chat. You can talk about having general information that's put out. You can talk about anything that guides them to get them to the right person even, right? If they've clicked on 3 of the bots and it's directed to the right person, and then they click on, I want to talk to a human, maybe it routes to tier 2 or tier 3 instead of your tier 1 agents. Maybe it routes to the product expert on your team that has to handle that. So it can also be used for routing. And that is part of this conversation we're talking about of using best practices for increasing your automation and your processes. The faster you can get a customer to the right answer, as we all know, the greater satisfaction they're going to have with your service. And that's the whole use case out of chatbots, automation, and creating workflows, is to make sure you're routing them to get them the right answer. And a lot of times that takes collaboration, which should be used for the human aspects. The collaborative tickets are the ones you want your agent spending the most time on, not the tickets that can be self-serviced or answered through standard responses. So we consider linking a ticketing system with a chat solution to be a very clear best practice amongst our customer base and who we've surveyed. Joanne, back to you to talk about number 4.
Awesome. So we can all appreciate the power of reports and analytics. So at Constellation, we've used these analytics to help identify opportunities to provide clear visibility into our support team's efforts, performance, while monitoring the overall customer experience. Since implementation of TeamSupport, we've launched employee utilization tracking. So this has allowed us to make informed decisions on streamlined workflows and identifying opportunities to cross-train our team, reducing our need to hire additional headcount. We've gained granular visibility on ticket volume by product, ticket type, time spent on internal versus external tasks. We've also have the benefit of tracking these metrics, provides us with the visibility of the employee health. So that is one thing that I find is very key, is really understanding burnout before it's happening. So we've been able to identify employees at risk due to surpassing their target utilization, which has helped us avoid that burnout and really bring in additional resources, headcounts, or looking for areas of improvement within the software or providing automation to reduce that workload on the employee. So that said, another powerful metrics is the ability to track our SLAs. So not only taking a look at what we're doing internally, but also what are we doing for our customer? So here, what we like to do is track 3 SLA types. And if you're not familiar, that's the service level agreement. So we like to track that time to first response, time to next action, and time to close. So monitoring and tracking these metrics ensures we're providing the fastest response in an acceptable timeline, providing that optimal customer experience. We've also enabled warnings to team members as they approach those violations to our SLAs, which has reduced our overall violation to under 5% from our tickets submitted today. Excellent. Moving on, Pete. So yeah, I did mention this. It provides a lot of visibility with the effort that we're putting into our tickets, but it's also allowing us to take a look at what we can do to reduce some of the effort, but also still maintaining that high level customer experience. The analytics have helped us, as I said, cross-train our employees. So we've had employees that would tell us that they were at their maximum level, but really taking a look at the analytics, and they were spending most of their time on internal tasks and internal meetings. So it gave us that visibility to really take a look at which meetings our staff were attending and ensuring that that was the best use of their time. It also gave us that opportunity to take a look at, well, where did we have the most coverage on our products here at Constellation? And we cross-trained a lot of our support agents in order to provide that coverage that was required for our support hours. So a lot of great things. And when it comes to analytics, I could talk forever on a lot of the enhancements and things that we've done due to these analytics. Moving on to the last. So the power of collaboration. So the ability to track a ticket through its life cycle has been a game changer. I mentioned this previously on a previous slide as well. So what we've done here is really taken TeamSupport and made it our source of truth. So when a contract is signed, that ticket gets a sales checklist, goes into TeamSupport. That gets reviewed, assigned over to our finance team. This is the same ticket from the finance team. Once they're completed with their administrative tasks, they assign it to our onboarding team. Our onboarding team then, as I mentioned previously, puts in that checklist, goes through the onboarding and puts all their meeting notes, any of the customer concerns, if we need to put anything over to development. This all happens within one ticket. At the end of the day, when this customer goes for graduation, we also provide them with a warm handoff into our hub so that they know they have those resources available to them at their fingertips. So we're no longer seeing that black hole effect where you're going to send a ticket to another group and not really know what's been happening or how it's been resolved. And then the last point that I'd really like to put is one of my favorites is you can actually subscribe to these tickets. So if there was an item, for example, that we've sent over to our product team, and I want to keep an eye on all those conversations that are happening so that I can keep the customer informed and making sure that we're making good progress, I can subscribe to those tickets. I can receive the updates in my inbox, or I can have a view within TeamSupport and take a look at the progress of all the tickets that I've subscribed to. And then handing that back over to you then, Pete.
Yeah, Joanne, you mentioned a very common and I think undervalued aspect of what automation process and software can do for a team is that if you have to leave your ticketing tool to go to Slack or go to email and track down responses internal, right, interdepartmental to your organization, it just takes away from the efficiency. And it also has leakage of information or best practices that we've seen. So if you really look at, right, we talked about 70%-ish of tickets or inquiries are handled on the first contact. Okay, that leaves, let's just say roughly 30% that are complex, that probably have collaboration, right? The easy example is if you're a software company providing a software to your customers, ticket comes in, you might have to check with, product to say, was it built that way? Maybe check with engineering to see if that was a bug, talk to sales to see if they sold it that way or set the wrong expectations. All that information needs to be within a ticket or in an essential place. So the person who responds to that customer, typically an agent, has that information to correlate the right answer. And you can't go into this black hole effect that Joanne talked about where you've never heard back. So you need to have some SLAs, just like you have them with your customers externally, have to have them with your internal customers or departments to say, I've tagged you in this ticket. I need to hear back from you in a certain period of time. And then you correlate those answers up, share them amongst the team, or instantly then put them back into your knowledge base, your customer hub for self-service, right? Because if you're not making this a living, breathing thing, which is what improving processes should be, of saying, we learned something, we have this, that's complexity that's going on, we solve this, now let me get it out to the masses for quicker response time for the second, third, fourth, fifth, or 100th inquiry on this situation, then you're really not improving and you're sitting on this hamster wheel. And so making sure the collaboration, that all teams are seeing the issues, that you have SLAs internally for response times, and then that information is easily taken to the self-service aspect that I mentioned before of a knowledge base, or even into a chat bot to put it on the front end of your business, right? That then you're staying stagnant. And what we have to do in these tough economics times is move forward and improve our efficiency throughout the months, the quarters, and the year. And if you do that, you're going to come out of these do more with less times as a more streamlined organization, and your customers will really appreciate that because they're getting their answers quicker, they're more accurate, and there's less time between back and forth. And so this quote down below is one of my favorites is, customer service isn't in a department, right? And it shouldn't be. It's the entire company. But if you don't have a collaboration tool, right, or your ticketing service or your chat service, however you're managing your customer base today, isn't built for collaboration, you're at a disadvantage. And that's the best practice we've seen from our customers when we survey them and how we move forward. Joanne, anything to add there before I jump it to the next slide?
I will just reinforce that collaboration has been instrumental in our teams and really providing that unified approach. It's not, well, sales said this to me, but team, our customer support rep said this. We can actually review all of that collaboration so that everybody's on that same page and we're having that unified approach to the customer.
That to me is really where the relationship aspect comes in, right? If you're trying to get customer satisfaction, you want to deflect what I talked about in tickets. You want to make sure you have standard responses. You want to look at your analytics for best practices. And that's what customers appreciate. Let me get fast responses. The relationship comes in with the complexity side. And if you're not dedicating the right energy and amount of time to that because you're inundated with the routine stuff, that's where the relationship we find breaks down. And if you're really going to maintain lifetime customer value or long-term success with your customers or clients, you have to make sure your energy is spent around that complexity aspect of the business. And collaboration is key there.
Absolutely agree.
Okay, so I'll wrap. We have 2 slides left to kind of wrap up the session. Joanne, please jump in. But we want to make sure that the do more with less time, right? These turbulent economic times don't lead to poor customer experiences. And so we talked about make sure that a certain % of your business is being self-serviced. Your customers want it. In fact, as I mentioned, 70% of them expect it out of you. So if you're not offering it, they may look at as we're with a laggard or somebody who's not staying up with the demands of a customer. Standard responses are critical as well. They won't come off as impersonal. They'll actually come off as very helpful. And you can tweak those over time. Chat automation, as I mentioned as well, is critical as the digital conversations are increasing at 68% year over year. Right, it's the fastest growing part of interactions across the customer experience or customer service market we have today. And then you have to bring data to the table. I'm sure you've seen this increase over the years, but it's very normal to have the recency bias in a support organization or somebody that's managing customers, because it's an emotional experience at times when you're dealing with people that either want answers now or maybe are not happy. And what we can't do is just swing the pendulum on the last 5 conversations we had with big customers or important customers, right? They weigh it, but the analytics will help smooth that out to say, where does our energy really need to be spent? And then the power of collaboration, because it's a team game. Nobody's on an island. And if you aren't collaborating with other team members. One, it's great to have the back office folks, right? Consider them QA, development, product, hear from the customer and feel what they're feeling. And I think most departments appreciate that, because you're bringing them into the fold without just hearing it from an agent internally. They're actually seeing the information from the source. And that's critical for growth as well. So we'll end with this graphic, right? We want the new norm. Don't fall into the case where, oh, I'm a product of my environment. I have a routine staff and I can't do as much as I did before, and your customers are going to suffer. Take some of these best practices. We hope you do anyway, because they've certainly been proven success in companies, and Joanne's here as a testament to that you can have an efficient team, you can have automation and streamlined workflows, and that can result in great customers' experiences, which hopefully results in great financial success as well and customer satisfaction. So that's the key to making sure that those metrics are staying top of mind to any service organization. So as I mentioned before, we're going to open it up to Q&A. And I think, Geoff, I'm not good at multitasking, so I was not looking at any of the chats that were coming in while I was speaking.
That's fair enough.
If you have some of those, I'm happy to answer them, or I'm sure Joanne is as well.
Absolutely. Pete and Joanne, first of all, thank you. Excellent material, great content. I was burning up my keyboard trying to capture all the notes on all the stats and the insights and the quotes and the best practices that you shared here. It was great to have the balance of someone who kind of knows the technology side of this and the best practices, and someone else who kind of knows the operations and implementation and the real world scenarios part of it. Super valuable. So I have a bunch of questions, but we've had some great questions come in via live chat too. So let me go through those first. At the very beginning, you shared some statistics around resolution on first contact. The question that someone had was, how do you measure that? Is that measured by a survey, or is it measured by just looking at individuals or cases, tickets that have had more than one interaction attempt with some threshold over time? Do you know how that stat was created? Pete, you are muted.
Man, Geoff, isn't that just a rookie move after 2 years of being on 2+ years? We looked at real world information, 95 million interactions. So think 95 million tickets that we've had from our customers. And we looked at whether they put something in a customer hub, which Joanne showed as a graphic that we have that can be self-serviced, entered a chat, or their first ticket that they entered. So any interaction that they had with a system that was provided is what we called first contact.
Great, thank you. Great answer. Wasn't sure if you know that at your fingertips, and sounds like a huge sample set you're working with, so probably a pretty accurate statistic across the board. Someone's asking about permission levels. Can users of the solution have different permission levels? And I know that's probably a yes or no, but I assume the question behind that is, can you talk a little bit about what the different permission levels allow access to?
I can absolutely talk about that.
Great.
Unless you want to take it, Pete.
Joanne, people want to hear from the real world, I'm sure, experience. So go ahead.
So what we've done is we've actually segmented it into our product groups. So we have different product groups across. We also have our admins and we have our super users. And you can actually set this at a group level, but also as an individual level. And then you have different ways of getting those permissions. For us, we only allow certain customers to be able to utilize public actions, for example. But our finance team, we also like to limit some of their interactions. So we only allow them to do private actions so that we can have our customer-facing teams go and do those public actions to the customer. So there's a lot of ways to limit access, but also grant access depending on which group you have in the system.
Wow, cool. So if I heard that right, there's permissions not only for your internal users, but even your customers, you can give different levels of permission to.
I would say for customers, I believe it's an all or nothing at this time. Pete, you can keep me honest on that, but that's how it's either you've enabled it or you haven't enabled it. Now that could just be how we've implemented it. So don't quote me on that. You could reach out to TeamSupport for a lot more of that granularity, but there are a lot of ways to customize the permissions for internal users.
I'll just spend 2 minutes there. Joanne
Yes.
is 95% accurate on that. The one thing people have the ability to do if they set up a customer hub instead of doing the omni-channel, they want to put people into a customer hub, is you can customize permissions there. if you want, on how, identifying different types of customers that way. And then you can restrict or enhance some of the permissions through that. But
Nice.
that's the way you
Okay.
do it.
It's a
Perfect.
hub experience. Okay.
Thanks for keeping
Great.
me honest, Pete. We
Yeah,
have the
no
all or
problem.
nothing solution right now.
So a little more of a strategic question asked by Rick. So that is, look, we get that technology is advancing really rapidly related to self-service, but how is that holding up to how quickly people are actually adapting to it, right? Are we outstripping our customers' ability to keep up? And if so, what do we do about that?
I'm not sure. Can you clarify that question again? Are we
Yeah,
outstripping
let me
our
rephrase it again. So the
support?
technology to do self-service is advancing really rapidly, right? To enable and empower customers to self-service. But are customers actually adopting that technology? Are they finding it frustrating? Are we outstripping them and leaving some customers behind?
I'll let Joanne go first on her self-service experience, and then I'll chime in.
I can take this one. So we've recently launched that self-service tool, and in order to really promote it to our customers, we held sessions such as this, which is really walking through everybody step by step how to really utilize our customer portals. We've gone through showing them how to attach an image into their tickets, doing a live recording of their screen in order to submit those tickets. So we've taken it down to the basics and really shown each step of the way and had those recorded and also sent out to our customers. But we don't limit the self-service. We still keep the other channels open for those customers that do not want to adapt to the technology, because we do have those.
Great. So some education to help keep people
Absolutely.
moving forward, but also recognizing there's some valuable customers out there who aren't ready for it, and you keep the other channels open for them.
Exactly.
Geoff, our experience with dealing with our over 1,600 customers is that you can't look at this as a project. Hey, I got to get self-service in place and check, I did it. It's a process that you have to keep tuning, honing, making sure the answers are being updated, that new information is being available to a customer, and that you are giving options to folks. Not everybody's the same. And so if you think I'm going full self-serve, that's where you start to get frustration. At any time, they have to be able to click through to a live agent to be able to do that. And if you do it right over time, you'll find that the live agent click-throughs reduce over the quarters or over the years, or however you want to track your success. But if you just try to implement right off the bat and not try to tune it, are my knowledge base articles right? Are my chatbots, are my automation working? That's where the analytics come in. You got to review this stuff just like you'd look at a CSAT for an agent, right? You got to look at a CSAT for yourself. Self-response or self-service and say, is this really providing the right answers? And as you tune it, that's the best practice.
Pete, I'm so glad you said that, because that's what I see and hear that a lot, where people treat a project like this like a project, right? Like, okay, we launch it, we finish it, we move on, and we forget all about what this thing is, instead of realizing this is a living, breathing thing. It's changing. Our customers are changing. Our people are changing. The products we're introducing are changing. And it's sort of like if you stand up a physical building, you have to have facilities management people to make sure that building is maintained, the trash is taken out, the windows are kept clean, the paint is redone. And the same thing is going on in this digital workplace that you've created for your customer service team. You also have to look at that and say, that needs to be maintained too, but even more so because it's touching the thing in your business that changes faster than anything else, and those your customer relationships. So thank you very much for sharing that insight with us. Another question just came in, and I assume this is for you, Joanne, because it's a very specific question. How long did it take you to implement chat automation capabilities?
So that isn't something we've implemented yet, but next on our list to tackle. So we've been in conversations with Pete's team to take a look at what that looks like and how we can get that into play. I would take the assumption that getting a lot of our standardized responses in play, building out those KB articles, will make this implementation a little bit easier from our side. Now, you can keep me honest on that, Pete, but I believe having those utilities will help us along the lines of getting this implementation. But I don't have the answer for that just yet, and I might have to ask Pete for his on average, how long does it normally take for that?
I can put Pete really on the spot here and say, Pete, how long will it take you to implement chat for Joanne?
So as I talked about, it's a phased approach. If
Mhm.
it depends on how the customer's operating. If you know your top 5 questions or categories you want to automate because you've been tracking that information through analytics, we can get that up and running in 2 weeks, right? We always recommend a phased approach to start with an answer. We call them answer bots or guide bots or knowledge bots or however you want to categorize those. And let's start with one first. Maybe it's the top 5 questions that get answered. And then let's start putting in some sophistication over time. And so I would tell you on average, you're going to get the chat responses if you have that information up in 2 weeks. Chat's not a difficult thing to implement. To get it to where you want it in all phases, it's probably going to take you about a quarter to have all that information and really tune it and hone it. And then a lot of times what you'll find out is that information isn't stagnant. And you're going to say, I'm going to take that information, and instead of just answering this and feeling good about my support, I'm throwing half of this in onboarding. Because you know what? We're missing something when we pull somebody in onboarding. And so the next quarter, after all those customers that now at that, you're getting new top 5 responses because you've improved the system, right? And it's a flywheel.
Pete, thank you for your answers to this. It's so refreshing to hear, and I hope everyone's taking stock in this, because it's super tempting to get a cool demo and think, let's just turn the software on and start using it. And you wind up with a shipwreck so often, right? And really everyone here take stock, because Pete is in the business of helping you get up and running with a solution that's going to work really well for you, and he's shooting straight with you about, I'm not just here to sell you licenses for something, right? This is how you need to do this to run a successful business. You need a plan. You need to think strategically. You need to take time to put things in place. And you also need to think about your nurturing, your maintenance program. You need to keep things tuned and tailored to keep them moving forward. Awesome, awesome best practice advice coming out of this session. Thank you so much for sharing that. Another question before I get into some of mine. So someone said this regarding analytics and said, how much can you customize the analytics you're pulling out of this? Let's start with that one. But if you want to follow up on it, I'd also ask, can you talk a little bit about overall solution customizability as well, right? There's always a question, how much can I do as a user, as a power user, as an administrator, and as a developer? And I know that's gigantic, so you'll have to give us some broad strokes, but just some ideas on how much can we tailor the system without calling professional developers to do it?
Joanne, why don't you want to talk about how you've customized your reporting, and then I'll talk about what the solution's built for.
Absolutely. I will tell you, the reporting is extremely customizable. We've created reporting not only for tickets versus open versus closed, how long it's taken to close tickets. I've done utilization on groups, but as well as individuals. I've taken a look at, I think I have about 200 different ways of slicing and dicing our data. I'm very big on analytics. So when I kind of get that question in my mind, I always go to TeamSupport, take a look at the options, and really pinpoint what we can do with that reporting structure. The best way that I can explain it is almost like a SQL query, where you're going to pick the tables, and within those tables, that is the information that you can pull. But I can also pull information such as ACIs. So one of the reports that we pull, and this is what helps us create that content, is the ACIs. What are the questions most commonly coming in from our customers? What are they asking about? What are we not able to answer quickly? And why are those questions coming in the way that they are, and how frequently they're coming in? So those are things that we can analyze with everything that we've been getting from TeamSupport. And I will say, I know Pete mentioned it earlier, it is a work in progress. It is not a set done. If you're wanting customers to come in and take a look at your hub, you need to provide content to make them come into that. You need to give value to the customers. And then in order to do that, you have all of the tools at your hands in order to get that in play.
Thank you for that. Pete, was there something you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to answer that second part of that question. Is we're built for business users, right? Super admins or admins, meaning that when we call it configurable. You don't need a developer to get up and running or customize our reports. And there's even customization in our solutions to where, a right side panel, you can have your revenue, are they HIPAA compliant, or what's my SLA? So you don't have to go search for things. Whatever you want in these custom fields, you drag and drop, and you can put them in so that they're at an agent's fingertips. The only thing you need a developer on the side is if you want to work with our API, or you want to have, custom connections into some other systems to tie into. Otherwise, we're a configurable system. You do not need to hire a developer or bring in a third party to help you do any of the customization.
So if I heard all that right, it sounds like you can do a tremendous amount of tailoring of the system, whether it's analytics or even system forms, fields, layouts, that kind of stuff. I guess I won't say on your own, but without requiring a developer, right? A technically adept user, power user, administrator can do that work. But you've got an API. So if there's something you need to do that's just not quite there out of the box, you have almost infinite flexibility with doing other things with it, should you choose to do so.
That's correct. And we have pre-built connectors as well. I mean, customer experience or customer support or engagement systems, whatever category you want to put them in, they don't live on an island. We typically, our number one integrations into CRM tools, right? Because you want to have a bi-directional information flow. So like I said, support isn't a department, it's a team game. And so everybody needs that information at their fingertips. So Geoff, that's our most common integration.
Okay, one other part of that same question that I didn't ask yet, can you talk, when it comes to analytics, can you talk about AI and sort of either, what the capabilities are now, what the capabilities are you're expecting? And I know the way this was framed up from someone was specifically around not just AI for pulling metrics, but AI for suggesting or even automating actions based on some of the reports and other analytics available in the system.
Yeah, so we're launching our AI solution in 2 weeks, what we're looking at is being able to do multiple things, right? But I'll start with a phased approach to what we do. One is to be able to have automated responses, right? That are built out of either a learning of your prior tickets or external systems, operating procedures, knowledge base, or things that your agents use on a consistent basis. People have to understand that AI just isn't like ChatGPT, where, hey, that was built on public data on the internet. What we're going to help you do is build that same thing on private data that was in your systems. So we still have to, it takes some time for that information that our systems will be able to learn it. You're going to have to review it to make sure you like those responses. And so there's a time frame. I talk to a lot of customers, and most of them are like, great, I want to implement AI. I'm like, awesome. What's your use case? I don't know. What do you want to do with it? And I'm like, hey, let's make sure we have the route, what we want to do on the responses. But most people have talked about, how can I automate the responses to either A, cut down on headcount, right? Because it is a cost side now, or B, utilize that headcount in more complex areas in our business. And then some higher level things people want to do with AI, which we will have as well, is think about looking at prioritization, auto writing to the right group, analyzing text in a ticket to make sure it gets to an expert. And so you're taking off of, making sure the customer has to click on things, right? Product do you have? What severity is this to you? And we're looking at the symptoms and prioritizing it and routing it to the right area. So those are the things we're going to be launching in AI.
That sounds exciting. So a lot coming down the pike with that, but the advice is still the same. Just because it's AI doesn't mean it's all that. It's intelligent enough to turn it on and let it go. You need some planning, you need some strategy, and you decide how it's a fit for your organization, your strategy. That's
right. And today, even before the AI, for years, we've had sentiment analysis in Geoff, where, you need to get a tone sometimes out of the language. So we have a sentiment score that you can utilize within our products to say, I saw the customer put in this ticket and it seemed relatively, rudimentary. And then, but why is the sentiment analysis at 99, which isn't good, right? Well, I should get back to these folks because they're using some angry language, or here's the things that we got to look at.
Yeah. So AI has been in your product for quite a while. There's some new things coming, but there's right. Already a base in there as well. Cool. So a few of mine, I don't know how many of these I'll have time for, but I noticed one of the first things you kind of shared as a capability and a best practice was sort of canned responses. So here's some frequent responses to things and kind of integrating those into chat and having that available. But how do you use the canned response without it losing a personal feel to the customer, right? Without it sounding like it's coming from a bot instead of a human.
Right. And I mentioned this is really keeping that personalization and keeping those canned responses in a casual tone. I've also had our users say, well, I don't really talk like that. And they've customized it, but that content is still there. And the most important thing, and we've mentioned this many times, is update and refresh your responses. Just because it worked this month does not mean after, your next product release that canned response is still as fresh and as accurate as it could be. So make sure that you're reviewing it and possibly even reviewing some of the tone that you've put in there.
So take it as a starting point, but allow the agents to add the human touch and keep it up to date.
Exactly.
Cool. Do you find along those lines that your customers start to be frustrated with bots and self-service? Do they want to escalate to a human at some point?
We haven't seen any of that frustration come in. So if somebody's gone to the self-service, have not seen what they wanted, maybe didn't like their ticket deflection, we do have automation in the system that if a customer went to an article and indicates this wasn't helpful, we have automation that will then create a ticket and assign it over to a rep so that we can proactively follow up with those customers and say, hey, we noticed that you were looking at this and you didn't find it helpful. What were you looking for? How can we help you?
Okay, back to the analytics. Those
Yep.
play a role in helping to keep that relevant. Okay.
Exactly.
I think we have time for one last question. So the two of you have suggested a multitude of great best practices, right? Whether it's this product or another product, there's been a lot of things you suggested. How can we help our audience to know if their customers are satisfied, or not even just satisfied? How do we know we're changing happiness, we're changing satisfaction? Should we just use a net promoter score or some other metric? How should we measure the effectiveness of what we're doing?
So we do this in a multitude of ways. So every ticket that goes out also has a rating once that ticket is closed out. So it is a very simple happy face, like it's a neutral as well as a sad face. So we have that in place. So we are obviously tracking those very closely. Anytime we have anything that's just below that satisfaction rate, again, that automation comes into play. It gets assigned over to a rep and we re-follow up. I also have some escalation points where I will actually follow up with the customer to make sure that they are happy with that interaction. But on top of that, in order to keep kind of that customer tone, we do NPS surveys once a quarter to our customers as well. And anything that comes beyond a promoter, we will follow up personally to figure out what we're not doing properly, what aren't they happy with, to see if there's anything that we can intervene and turn them into a promoter. So actively communicating with our customers, looking for their feedback is really what I would be suggesting for everybody to do.
Nice. So two-tiered, some of it in real time as the events are happening, and some of it more, I won't say reactive, but more, in aggregate and checking promoter scores via surveys and making sure you're tracking with all that. Pete, Joanne, thank you so much. Amazing, amazing session. Really appreciate you sharing your time and your expertise and your experiences with us today. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Geoff.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks everyone. We're up against the top of the hours, or actually the end of the broadcast. So I want to thank everybody that joined us today. Thank everyone that asked questions, and especially TeamSupport for making this webcast possible. I'd also like to have a personal thanks for Joanne, who joined this webcast. Everybody wants to listen to a peer or somebody that, has the exact same questions. So, and we don't actually get a lot of clients coming on. So it's very generous of you, and thank you so much. Pete, thanks so much for joining us today. And Geoff, great job again. Geoff, again, is managing partner of C5 Insights. He's also the chairman of our Smart Customer Service Conference. And just to remind everybody, if you'd like to review the event or send it to a colleague, you will get an email once the event is posted just a little later this week. And we do have another session tomorrow that you can join us at 11:30 a.m. Harnessing Generative AI for CX and EX, a practical approach. So thanks again to everybody that joined us. Thanks to our speakers and Geoff. And hope to see you tomorrow.
Prize winner, Bob.
Oh, okay. The prize winner. Okay. You've been waiting for this. Okay. The prize winner is Rick Malsh. And I've been told it rhymes with Walsh. So yeah, we'll get to you, Rick. Don't worry. And connect you with your prize. Thanks so much, everyone.